Well, checking myself here. Okay. Whoa, my light went out. There I am. All right. Well, hello, everyone. It's your girl, Gabrielle from A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. So, if you are new to this program, let me tell you what this program is about. And if you are familiar with us, I'm just going to remind you. So, this is the web series where we like to talk that real talk, right? We like to talk about things happening in education, employment, mental health, physical health, or anything else that is steamy. We've done episodes on ADHD, we've done episodes on being a child of divorce, uh, how to budget. We've done a variety of topics, and today is no different. So I am excited because not only do I have a repeat guest, but I have a repeat topic. So the repeat topic is teacher trauma, why self care is so hard to access. I am excited about bringing this topic back. If you watched our previous episode, this is just a continuation of that topic. So, we like to bring back topics here. We like to do deep dives into these things, and we like to get different perspectives. Well, in this case, it's the same person, so we're going to do more of a deep dive into it. So I am excited to be bringing this topic back. So let's get into it. So, of course, I have a repeat guest, which is also exciting. I love it when the guests come back to the hot seat. Her name is Carrie Meyers, and I'm going to remind you about who she is. So, who is Carrie Meyers? Let me tell you who she is. So, Carrie Meyers is passionate about supporting educators to embody and model balance, joy, curiosity, and fulfillment for their learners. With a master's degree in curriculum and instruction and experience in public and private schools since 2005, Carrie has taken her love of education out of the classroom to guide educators back to themselves. As a French teacher who experienced burnout during the COVID-19 pandemic, Carrie started empowering educator so she could support teachers through trauma-informed, present moment support to empower every educator to center their own well-being and see the ripple effect in school communities. Fabulous, fabulous. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bring her to the stage. Hey, how you doing today?
Well, off air, we were briefly chatting that it's been a day. I feel like it's been a couple of weeks of just like a lot of stuff going on. Um,
Yeah,
so we talked about kind of doing something a little different this conversation, to have it be a little bit more interactive and hopefully a little bit more human, because I think what I feel super passionate about the fact that teachers and tutors and people in caregiving professions tend to just show up as this like polished individual on the surface without us really knowing what's going on below. And so I
yeah,
think kind of showing up today and both of us being like, we've had a bit of a day. Like maybe we just need to, be honest about the fact that we're not going to be super polished and that's okay.
absolutely. Sometimes we have our moments. We have our moments of chaos. So it's okay not to be okay,
Yeah.
as the kids say. All right, so we're gonna do have a more conversational style today. So I'm gonna let you take the lead.
Yeah. So part of the bio that you read had to do with this sort of trauma informed present moment support, because what I think tends to happen, I know at least for myself, is that I get on this loop of like everything that's wrong, right? So, like, The instance today was that my dog ate chocolate like the minute I was about to walk out the door. And so, of course, I'm freaking out and I'm like, oh my God, so that means I'm going to be late. So that means this is going to happen. So that means I won't be able to do that. And then my brain just goes on this cycle of bad, 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 worse, worse, worse. And I realize when that happens that I get stuck in this loop of like, this is what always happens. And the present moment support is like, oh, wait, hang on, I'm doing that thing again where I'm like going down the rabbit hole. And then I get a chance to kind of bring myself back to the present moment and say, wait, is it that bad? Like, can I figure out how to deal with the fact that my dog has just eaten chocolate? I have to go pick up someone. I have to then be responsible for this person. And I was able to sort of take myself out of panic mode,
Yeah.
make sure that my dog was okay and everything, but then say, oh, this is a loop that I play all the time. It doesn't actually help me like feel better. It doesn't actually help me like solve any problems. And yet it's such an automatic thing that I just like dive into. And I'm sure that you have instances where that happens to you as well. Like, what do you do when you're kind of in that, like, oh God, like in the thick of it?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't want to share too much detail, but I think I've had moments where you you plan for something. I feel like my life is in an organized chaos in a way. I feel like I try to plan things, I try to schedule things, and then when the time comes, I just don't stick to schedule. You know, it's um I'm not great with punctuality. I'm just gonna put that out there,
Mm,
and it's something I'm working on, but it's like no matter how often I try to plan things, and but the thing it's like I keep doing it
yeah.
because it's like I can't be in so much chaos, so it's like I have to know what I'm doing every day, and I have to I guess I don't really do well with time, but
Mm,
I still try to like I still need to know like what I'm doing every day. I need some kind of structure. But it's like when it's time to execute things, there's always something that either gets out of my hands and out of control, or I'm always delayed in some way. So it's like I feel like every day is chaos for me.
mm,
And so it's like every day I always have to find a way to get navigate the chaos. Like, okay, today's chaos again, so what am I going to do? And it's that immediate realization of I have to do something or else I'm going to stay this way.
mm,
So it's all right, well, I'm going to reschedule. I'm going to put it off for another day. I'm going to it's always it's I have to be in a position where I have to calm myself down before I go completely insane. So
yeah.
yeah, so it's like I have to stop myself and say I have to ask myself, do I want to be here right now?
Yeah.
And even though I mean, I will say it. I sometimes I put myself here in chaos, and I keep putting myself in chaos. But it's like, okay, I'm in chaos now, and
Mm,
what am I gonna do about this? I can't stay here. I have to
yeah.
change myself. So it's like I have to talk to myself. I have to push myself, and it's like it's like a split decision. Like, do I want to stay here? Yes or no? Okay, I don't want to stay here. What am I going to do? What can I do to make things easier for myself? And maybe I'm not the best with punctuality. I'm not the best with self care. And I feel like, again, I'm in an organized chaos, which is my life every day. but it's what can I do to lessen the impact, and what
Mm.
can I do to make sure things are not so crazy that I can't handle it.
Yeah, so you said a couple of things that I might just like reflect back to you and see about reframing it, because
Yeah.
what I heard you say is what sounds like probably a pretty familiar narrative, is that you tell yourself, I live in organized chaos. You tell yourself, I have some issues with punctuality. But then you also tell yourself, when you're in the throes of like, this is something I can't control, or this is something that is within my control, you speak to yourself in a way that's maybe a little different than the way you did just at the beginning, where you're like, well, I'm not good with time.
Mm,
um, so that's kind of that same loop that I was referring to, that I went through, which
yeah.
is like I got to do this, then I got to do this, then I got to do this, right? And if this happens, then it affects this and whatever.
Yeah.
And what you just talked about, like kind of taking yourself, I think, like an aerial view, and just being like, oh, wait, do I want to keep myself in this position of I'm bad at time, I have to reschedule things all the time, blah blah blah, or could I speak to myself in a more compassionate way, which is like, some of this was out of my control and I'm just doing the best I can, you know?
Yeah.
And that to me, so one thing I wanted to just make sure that we get to right away is like, what the heck is self-care? You know, like we hear about self-care all the time, and a lot of people kind of have this image of like a manicure or a massage, or I don't know, a day off. And the reality of most of our situations is that we can't just take a day off. We can't just play hooky and go get a pedicure, right?
Mhm.
Um, but what you just talked about, which was, I'm going to be able to reframe this situation to say, oh, I don't have to be here. I don't have to just go on this loop all the time of I'm always late, I'm in organized chaos, you know, I'm bad at this, to say, well, what's actually within my control? And what could I do to get me out of this loop to actually make a difference in this situation? And I'm curious how that lands with you, just that tiny reframing.
Yeah. It's interesting that you brought that up because um, there's a concept in the clinical mental health counseling world called cognitive restructuring. Um, Basically, that means you're taking the negative thought and you're flipping it into a positive thought. So so a negative thought could be something like, um, let me think of an example. A negative thought could be I'm always late, and if I flip that, I would say um, I may be always late, but I let people know that I'm going to be late, or um, I may be always late, but I know not to overschedule things, or
Mhm.
I know not to take on too many things at once.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, I may be always late, but um, and I guess this depends on people's views, but it's only 10 minutes, it's only 15 minutes, so it's I mean, I know some people may say, well, you're not attacking the root of the issue. You're only cutting off the branches of the tree. You're not really dealing with
Mhm.
the roots, but that's a whole other conversation. But
Mhm.
um, I think that's what people need. Some people just, hey,
Yeah.
I'm not ready for my roots to be pulled out yet. Sometimes I just need the branches, and even just
Mhm.
taking those small steps, I snip off a branch and then snip off a little bit more.
Mhm.
Eventually I'll get to the roots, so everyone is different.
Yeah, I think that's huge what you just brought up, which is that sometimes you can't go for the roots right away. Like sometimes
Mhm.
these are really deep-seated beliefs. And I'm speaking mostly just like we're talking kind of about the cognitive, like how like our mental processes around these.
Yeah.
But when it comes to patterns of not taking care of ourselves, or patterns of putting ourselves down, or patterns of, being late,
Mhm.
what you just brought up is that we can't necessarily start at the root until we recognize how the branches are affecting whatever's going on. So if you're talking about the instance of being late, I mean, my first thing is well, who is it really inconveniencing, right? Like,
Mhm.
if it means I get to take the time to finish my lunch, and so I'm going to be 5 minutes late to a webinar or something, isn't it better that I nourished my body and took that time for myself rather than showing up late or potentially on time, but like famished, right?
Mhm.
Or, let's say it's a repeat client or a student that we work with, and they're just like, hey, you let them know up front. I tend to have a lot on my plate, and sometimes I have an issue, starting assignments or starting appointments on time. Are you cool with a little bit of flexibility if we can have kind of like a 15-minute grace period, and just kind of setting yourself up for, this is something I tend to do. It's something that I'd like to get better at. But in the meantime, while I'm at this branch level of who is it really affecting and how is it affecting them, how could I set myself up so that way then I'm not doing the double berating of like, I did the bad thing and now
Yeah.
I'm mad at myself for doing the bad thing. And I think that just takes time, right? It takes a lot of time to become aware of the fact that, maybe what our need is exactly what you said, is not overscheduling ourselves, is
Mhm.
not putting on too many things to our plates. And that's a really hard thing to do as a teacher, as a tutor, as a coach, as a caregiver, because we tend to go into those roles because we like to care for other people. But often what that means is we're doing it at the expense of our own needs being met. So when I see something that's like, I want to reframe this as, I show up late and it's because I'm really detail oriented and I needed to finish this project before I could switch my mind to this new meeting that I had to go to. That to me feels like an act of self-care. And this is sort of the shift that I wanted to get into, which is that it's not necessarily a massage. It's not necessarily, a day at a hot springs. It could just be, I don't sit there and give myself like the talking to that some other authority figure in my life has given me, like since I was young. And I could
Mhm.
reframe to say, oh, I'm a detail oriented person. So what I need is more time to work on projects and to not take on so many things. And that in and of itself is, I think, kind of a revolutionary thought.
Yeah, and I think also, I think we have, it's a few things. I think it's like I could talk as a tutor. I don't have the classroom experience, but I have more tutoring experience. Um it's and even in some ways as a teacher, I think we have to understand that there is there are forces outside of us that manipulate what we do. Um so like being a teacher, for example, like I know, you know, some teachers want to come in and save the kids, and I want to change, um I want to change the dynamic of our students, and I want to support the education, but there's you know there's there's the low pay, there's deadlines, there's quotas, there's so I think we we have to go in expecting the worst. So
Mm, mhm,
um like you have to go in knowing that like you be upfront with the salary, and say, hey, don't, this is not, even with tutoring, this is not a job that you get rich from, you know, unless I'm wrong, someone corrects me. But this is
There's
not,
those millionaire tutors out there,
yeah,
Gabrielle, and they're waiting for you.
yeah, there's the Khan Academies and the and the mathnasiums and the, so um and they're probably making, millions of dollars, but it's luck. It's luck, and it's also shareholders, and it's
Well,
also
yeah.
yeah, so investors, and so it's what you see isn't always, uh is a lot more to what we see, pretty much. But
Yeah.
it's being aware being aware of yourself, and being aware of the systems
Mm-hmm.
that surround you. So um like even like with tutoring, even with in-home tutoring, being aware of traffic, like being aware, like traffic is horrible between 3 and 6, or between 6 and 9 in the morning. And so how do I adjust for this, or if I have 3 and 4 clients in the same day and I have to commute to them, I have to be aware of the travel time. um so what can I do so that the the people that are close to each other are in the same day,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So making it easier for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there's traffic, I have to find parking, or I have to take the subway, and these are things that are out of your control. So what can I do to make it easier for myself, so
Yeah.
I'm not stressed out? And even, I mean, I would think even for teachers, like, okay, I have 30 students to a class, um, and I have these quotas to meet, and I'm sure that, not all schools are the same. So maybe it might just be, maybe this isn't the right school for me. Let me try a different type of school. And if that and having the courage to leave and say, I want a better environment. But even I'm here now, I'm a teacher in training. I'm trying to, I don't know how it works with credentials, but I'm a teacher in training, and I want to be a head teacher, and um, this is where I'm placed. What can I do to make the most out of this situation? Um, and I have 30 students right now, and I have these quotas. What can I do? Like being aware of, I have 30 students, I'm the only adult in the room, or I have to get these I have to meet these deadlines. I have all these homework assignments that I have to put together. So I'm aware of all these things that are outside of me. So what can I do to make it easier on myself?
Yeah.
Maybe let me take all these students and break them up into little groups, and assign student leaders. Hey, you're in charge of these group of kids, um or maybe prepare things ahead of time. So it's knowing what is outside of you, and um and there are things that are outside of you. I know people like to say, well, it's up to you, and some of that is true. But some of that is, there are things outside of you.
Yeah.
So being aware of that, and adjusting to that, and making it easy for yourself.
Yeah, I think you brought up so many good points. One of which is like there's very real systemic barriers to us really tending to ourselves as educators, as tutors, as coaches, because the system has been set up sort of to exploit the unpaid labor of people who are supposed to be in this profession because they love it, because it's for the kids. And all of that is true, right? Like we go into this profession because we want to help students, we want to help the next generation, we want to make a difference. But then you have this system which has been designed without sort of the human at the center of it, both in
Yeah.
terms of what a teacher or a tutor is capable of and what a student is capable of. So when you gain that systemic awareness and you say, okay, within the school system or within this tutoring organization or within this coaching program, I have these very real deadlines, quotas, expectations, etc. But within that,
Mm-hmm.
what am I doing for myself? And it could be exactly what you were talking about, which is, well, it's unrealistic for me as one single person to grade an individual assignment for 30 kids every single day, right? Like, I don't want to spend that much time creating an assignment, distributing it, grading it, putting it in the grade book, and returning it. Like, that's a lot of time and energy that goes into one assignment. And if I have to do that every single day, what I tend to think is that teachers have these unwritten rules that they're following, and they believe that someone is like looking over their shoulder at every turn. And it is very possible that at a certain school you're going to have a micromanager, department chair, or vice principal or head of school or whomever who does micromanage, and that is unfortunately just a reality of poor leadership, honestly.
Yeah.
Some people just they make their way up the ranks without ever actually getting trained in how to manage people. And the best types of managers are those who are hands off, those who say, hey, I trust you to do your job. And when you are in an environment where that becomes possible, you then get to say, oh, maybe I don't have to grade one assignment for every single kid every single day. Like, is anyone actually looking over my shoulder at my grade book? And like, yes, I do know that there are public grade books that parents are very, very aware of and, are very up on. I think that that's a really big disservice to teachers to have to do that, because what it does is put into question our professionality and like our ability to, God bless you, our ability to again, like, be trusted as the professionals we are to educate students and to be giving them feedback and to be getting enough material from them to really judge sort of how are they doing in the class without being micromanaged by parents. But that's a whole nother thing. So what I'm saying is, if you are in a situation where you're able to be aware of the systemic constraints, but then within that work for yourself and say, okay, could I do peer editing or peer grading? So that way now I'm getting one thing from each student once a week, or I'm getting one thing for a group of students that we're going to, sort of transfer. What if I did, one classroom assignment and one homework assignment? What if it's a project that has just a couple of little due dates? Like, these are all ways of saying, this is the system. This is how I need to function within the system. And this is how I do it in a way that's sustainable to me. And that is an act of self-care, even though it's never going to be labeled as one by, the media, because that doesn't sell, right?
Yeah.
We need to sell people massages and pedicures and all of that. But what self-care really is a reclamation of like, what do I need to be able to do this job, right? Like, I always think about how teachers hold their bladders all day, right? Or they like don't take enough water so they don't have to use the bathroom, so that they don't have to go all day. And you're like, you're literally spending 7 to 8 hours a day without drinking water. Like, you're skipping your lunch, you're not having breakfast. Like, what is that doing to your body? And then the flip side of that, I talk about sort of the ripple effect that self-care has in communities.
Mm-hmm.
What are your students seeing? Then they're seeing a teacher who is undernourished, who is overgiving, and is never actually taking time for themselves. And then that continues to perpetuate this norm that we do everything at the extent or at the expense of like our well-being. And that's just not okay in my book anymore. I think it's really time for teachers to say, okay, here are the limitations of the situation I'm in, but this is how I can reclaim my needs for my physical needs, emotional, cognitive, spiritual, relational, by building these supports in, so that way we can be teachers and tutors and coaches for longer, because you see that there people are leaving the profession left and right because it's unsustainable.
Yeah, and I think with and particularly with with the pandemic and COVID and all that happened in the past couple of years, I think it exposed um the flaws of the teaching system. In that like even here in New York, it's like chaos pretty much. Like um so with the homeschooling community, I know because there are parents that are afraid of their kids getting sick, and because schools are trying to they keep trying to pack the kids in, despite their COVID is still around, but they're still trying to get kids inside the schools, and they're trying to sell like, oh well, we sanitize more, and we make all kids wear masks, but and they're still trying to get the kids into the schools. Um, and I think it's a financial thing, but there's some parents that are still scared about that, and so they're keeping their kids home, and here in New York they had the remote learning option. They did the remote learning, and then they did a blended where it's remote and in school, and I think they just faded out the remote learning. Or no, it's still going on, but it's only for like snow days. so so they're trying to get kids back into the schools now. But but there's some parents that are like, I want my kid to do the remote learning and to stick to that. I don't want my kid around around all these people, around all these other kids that I think vaccination is down to 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so there's still parents that are still freaked out about that. Um, so going back to my earlier point, that homeschooling has exploded in the past couple of years, um, because of the pandemic and because of the flaws of the system,
Mm-hmm.
and the powers that be are more concerned about getting kids into the schools and as many kids as possible, because I think every kid is a dollar sign.
Mm-hmm.
so so and then homeschooling kind of takes funding away from the schools. um so there seems it's like a systemic pressure against homeschooling in a way.
Mm-hmm.
um but that's just me. But because of all these systemic flaws, I think the pandemic exposed that. And to me, like, if you want to keep the funding in the public schools, why not open up a remote option? And you have teachers who are afraid to go back because they're around all these kids at the same time in an enclosed space. And even it's something just occurred to me that a lot of these schools are poorly ventilated. So yeah, so this pandemic has exposed a lot of flaws in the public school system, and so um, even now as things are loosening up, I'm even wondering like, are is it still ventilated? Like,
Yeah.
is it still being sanitized? So what's going on? Um, so I think the pandemic has exposed all these flaws in the system, and therefore everyone not everyone but a lot of people are afraid to go back into the schools, like parents too. Well, what's my thought? Some teachers as well, some teachers would
Yes.
prefer the remote option. um, but unfortunately there's some systems in place that they don't they don't provide that as
Yeah.
as an option for teachers to work from home. And I think even our mayor in New York City, he actually discourages work
Mm.
from home.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other thing. I think all that to say that this pandemic has exposed a lot of systemic flaws, and people are realizing that now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even now, I just saw an alert talking about, COVID cases are on the rise again. So,
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, this is the reality of the world we live in, and the reality is exactly what you said, which is that people are dollar signs, you know? It's
mm,
not about the learning. It's not about actually getting kids to feel safe, to feel curious. It's about we need bodies in seats and we need curriculum to just go ahead as planned without any modifications for the interruptions and the stress of doing all of this. And this goes back to this idea of trauma, which is that we can't learn if we are in a perpetual state of hypervigilance, of over, high reactivity, of survival mode. I mean, honestly, I think so many people, educators, administrators, students, parents, tutors, everyone has been in this state of, I just have to make it to tomorrow. I just have to figure out like what's the next thing and then what's the next thing. And what that does is again kind of put us into a present moment awareness of like, what's the most important thing right now? Like, what's the most important thing for my safety, for the safety of my family, for the safety of my community? And at this point, we recognize that the system isn't really going to change and it's not really going to provide any sort of support if we're not getting those remote options, if we're not getting the support to do what we need to do to keep ourselves and our families safe. So, in that spirit, what we can control is how we take one step and then another step to ensure our own safety and survival so that then learning becomes possible. And what I'm seeing with a lot of teachers is them just getting fed up and saying, I can't do this anymore because the level of expectation is too high and it's too just unrealistic for what is actually being provided in terms of support. So we talked briefly about resources off air, and I just wanted to bring that term back in. We use resources a lot when we think about like, doing like a research paper, right? Like you need to
yeah,
find your different sources or whatever. What I mean when I say resources is what is it that's going to keep me going so that I can then do my job? What I noticed when I was teaching during the pandemic was that outside of school, everything I was doing was basically a coping mechanism for stress, right? So it was,
mm,
okay, I need to like cook myself some nourishing food so I have leftovers so I don't have to think about, food. I need to practice yoga because otherwise, like, I am going to have the upper body, like, really bad tightness and restrictive movement. I need to have some social interaction without teacher friends once a week so I can just talk about something that has nothing to do with my stressful job. Um, I started a tarot card practice during the pandemic because I was like, I need to do something that isn't a screen, but is still going to kind of give me a chance that's like a meditative daily practice to think about, what are some things that are going on in my life that I might be able to recognize, as I'm pulling cards on a daily basis. And all of those things were because I had needs that I was ignoring and I wasn't able to do my job well. So then when I was outside of school, I was like, well, okay, what do I need physically, mentally, socially, spiritually, and cognitively to be able to then do the best thing I can within this system that is really structured and really restrictive? And still I got to a point where I was like, I still can't do this anymore. Like I have been too stretched thin. And so I
yeah,
had to kind of like collect all my pieces of myself and bring it in and say, okay, what can I do with this? What I really want to do is help teachers figure out how to take care of themselves because that's something that we haven't really been taught to do. And this goes back to our I guess second conversation, but the first part of this conversation, which is that we don't tend to attune to our own needs. We tend to feel like we're getting our needs met when we're caring for others. But what that is rooted in is the trauma that we've been subjected to in the education system and potentially throughout our developmental, childhood years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I feel really passionate about saying, hey, teachers, the system isn't going to change, but what you can have control over is how you respond to the structures that are in place.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, if it comes down to it, even having the courage to say, um, this isn't working out,
Yeah,
you know?
it's hard.
Um,
It's really hard.
yeah, and I think um, just having that realization and being aware that, this job is not working, or this school is not working, or I don't like this system, or just being aware that this is not working and something needs to change. And if that means I have to leave, then I have to leave. It's having that courage to make the hardest decision,
Yeah.
which is I may want a new job.
Mm-hmm.
I may want to go to another school, or even if even saying I may just want to leave schools entirely. I've spoken to um, some colleagues in the tutoring industry, and a lot of them are former teachers.
Yeah.
And, they were broken by the system. And so they left and decided to form their own tutoring companies where they're in control of their students and they see one student at a time, or
Mm-hmm.
small groups. So and they decide what they want to, how they want to tutor, even though the content is based off of schools, but then they decide how they want to do it and the time that they set. And so it's more control that you have over your life. And it's when you're saying a lot of teachers are leaving in droves, what is that is speaking very loud.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And what is that saying? And there is a message there,
Yeah.
so um but I don't understand why the powers that be are not looking at that, but that's a whole other conversation. So
It is. Yeah.
uh,
We could spend all day on
and
that.
teaching conspiracies.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Gabrielle, I got you on that one.
All right, next episode, teaching conspiracies. Yeah, so just to kind of rein it in here, I think um the best ways for self-care. um I mean, I'm not against massages and
Oh, yeah.
yoga, and listen, I'm all for those things, but I mean, those are things that are financial investments.
Oh, yeah.
But and it may not be cost effective to be doing that every single week, but well, if you got the money, go for it. But in terms of what are some cheap things you can do, some inexpensive things you could do, is being self aware of yourself, to be aware of the systems in place, and to um I don't know how else to phrase it, but to use people, to use the students in your class, and like I said, make them student leaders, or use your colleagues, lean on your colleagues. um, Prepare your things in advance. If um, I see a lot of teachers now, they're printing worksheets offline, online. They're printing their worksheets now. I know back in my day, they created their
Oh,
worksheets
yeah.
by hand, and now when I see students, I see their homework packets, and it's all from K5 Learning and mathaids.com. I'm like, oh, Okay.
Well, I mean, you bring up a really good point, which is like, why reinvent the wheel? If someone
Yeah.
has put something out there that is going to support your students' learning, why are you spending the time creating something from scratch? And that,
Yeah.
again, is an act of self-care. And I think,
Yeah.
just kind of, like you said, wrapping it up, thinking about like cost-effective ways, like when I was talking about like, pulling tarot cards or meeting up with friends or cooking myself a nutritious dinner, those are things that I would do anyway. I'm just calling them acts of self-care because they are what is helping me get through. They are the thing they are the resources in my life that I can say, you know what? I had a really tough day. So what can I do for myself? Maybe I just sit and I breathe for 1 minute. Maybe I go for a quick walk around the block. Maybe I put my head down, and just close my eyes and just say, okay, that sucked. Here I am trying to deal with it. And I can reclaim that as I don't have to be a frantic teacher all the time. I don't have to spread myself thin all the time. I can be good enough if I tap into what I actually need. I can tap into the support, like you mentioned, of colleagues, of friends, of students. And that is a very, very powerful reclamation of I am a person first who needs to take care of themselves before I can tend to the needs of all of the people that I promised my energy to. And just to transition really quickly, I am putting on a free workshop next Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, and Gabrielle's going to link it. Thanks so much. For any teachers, educators, tutors, coaches, if you identify as a caregiver and you are someone who really struggles with taking care of yourself because you're so used to giving up your own needs in order to care for other people, you are my people. It's really hard, though, to get you to actually invest in yourself. So that's why this is free. It is time that you are going to spend learning about why it's so hard to tend to your needs, learn how to actually start listening to them, learn how to ask for them to be met, and then really important, celebrate that you ask for them to be met and that it is safe to do so from then on. Because we've gotten so used to not getting our needs met, it doesn't necessarily feel safe to ask, or if we ask, we immediately feel shame or guilt. We're going to talk about why that is the case and how do we safely get to a point where asking for what we need is possible. So there's the link. I really hope that I can get some teachers, some tutors, some coaches, some whomever that this resonates with to figure out why is it so hard to take care of ourselves and what can we do about it.
Awesome. Awesome. And on that note, I think we're going to draw this to a close. All right. So, Carrie, thank you so much for joining me today. I
Thanks for
encourage
having me as always.
yeah, we got to do this again.
We'll keep doing it, Gabrielle. Once a month, once every 2 months, I'm your girl.
Yeah, totally. And let me put up your contact information. All right, you guys. So you could find Carrie all over the place, right? She's on that social media, so please follow her. Follow her. She's on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. She is all over the place. So please follow her. Stay in touch with her. Pick her brain. Listen to her talk about conspiracies, whatever it is. So reach out to her. Her information is at the bottom of the screen right now. And of course, she has her small business, empowering in I gotta say this slowly,
You got this.
empoweringeducator.org. You want to briefly talk about your business and what you do?
Basically, that's it. I mean, I'm really trying all sorts of different ways to reach teachers. I'm trying to go through schools. I'm trying to go through teachers individually. I'm offering some free things. I'm doing some collaborative things. But it's basically coaching and group containers to help teachers feel safe to tune into what they need, to ask for what they need, to celebrate what they need, and to just set up better systems for what is actually going to sustain them and resource them as they do this incredibly powerful and important job, and then wondering and seeing how that is going to affect the school communities where they work.
All right, there you go. So if you are a teacher, a tutor, some sort of educator, right, and you need some supports, you need some guidance, you need some resources, hit up Carrie. Her information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. And for those of you watching this episode on our YouTube channel, all of this information will be in the description. All right, so Carrie, thank you so much for joining me again. And I am going to place you backstage. And you guys, now it is you and me. So let me put up my information here. All right, and we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us. So, wherever you are watching this episode, we are streaming in a lot of different places. So, wherever you are watching this episode, please check out our video library for more videos and clips. And don't forget to stay in touch with us. So, follow us, like us, tweet us, subscribe to us, whatever it is, stay in touch with us. And while you're at it, let us know. Sorry, I'm hearing noises. Let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. And as a reminder, this web series, the Hot Topics web series, is a production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So if you would like to learn more about our company, the things that we have to offer, our services, if you're looking for tutoring for yourself or for your child, please reach out to us. Our information is at the bottom of the screen, but I will say our website. It is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. And if you mention that you heard about us from Hot Topics, you will get a 15% discount off of 6 hours of tutoring. So again, there is a 15% discount off of 6 hours of tutoring if you mention that you heard about us from Hot Topics. So that is an incentive for you to seek tutoring services. And couple more things. Sign up for our email list, sign up for our texting list, stay in touch with us. That information is at the bottom of the screen as well, and also in the description if you are watching this on our YouTube channel. Okay, I've done a lot of talking, so I'm like, you feel it in your throat after so much talking, but all right, I'm just going to share this final message before we officially conclude.
Hey there, have you heard of us? We're a small team of tutors here at A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We believe that education and information should be accessible to everyone, regardless of income, race, or creed. We're dedicated to making this happen, but we need your help. Please consider making a donation to our company. No amount is too small. Your donation will allow us tutors to remain employed, offer free and low-cost services, put on productions like this web series, and reach out to families nationwide. With your help, we can tackle the academic challenges of our students and the emotional, mental, and behavioral changes that result from these challenges. As a bonus, we can improve our communities in the process. Support us today. Note: we're a for-profit company. We're not a charity. Your donation may not be tax deductible. Please consult a tax professional.
All right, you guys, that's it for our episode. Thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Thank you again. And now I am signing off. Bye.